35 of Russia's most advanced tanks moved in at dawn. By nightfall, the battlefield was littered with destroyed armor and smoking hulks. How could a force that powerful collapse in a single day? And how did Ukraine transform decoys, drones, and mines into tools that shredded one of Russia's elite brigades? The story reveals how modern combat isn't just about firepower, it's about information control, deception, and split-second timing. Stick around, because what unfolded near Vular shows a major shift in armored warfare. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could the destruction of one tank unravel the advance of an entire armored column? The Russian formation looked unstoppable at first. The lead T-8 0 BVM, covered in reactive armor plates and guided by combat engineers, rolled slowly into a single cleared lane cut through a minefield. Its weight pressed the soil flat while infantry marched alongside, scanning the bushes for threats. Behind it stretched a line of armor, each vehicle trusting that the first would keep the path safe. What none of them realized was that the earth under those tracks carried more than explosives. It carried a trap designed to collapse their entire push. The Russian brigade was not an ordinary unit. It was backed by naval infantry, soldiers trained for direct assaults in close quarters. Their confidence came from both numbers and equipment. They believed their armor could smash through Ukraine's defenses before drones or artillery could respond. To them, the minefields were just another obstacle that could be cleared with bodies and machinery. Ukrainian defenses looked quiet, almost abandoned. But that silence was not weakness. It was preparation. Around the kill zone, Ukrainian positions blended into the terrain. Empty vehicles and fake trenches acted as distractions. Thermal blankets reduced the heat signatures of dug-in tanks and infantry, so even when Russian optics scanned, they didn't spot real targets. In the tree line sat M2 Bradley fighting vehicles, kept dark and silent. They were placed to fire at multiple angles, yet concealed so well they appeared invisible until it was too late. Instead of hitting obvious bunkers, Russian eyes locked on deliberate decoys. Every second of that misdirection pushed the column deeper into the trap. The Russian advance itself showed brutal priorities. Infantry were used as little more than mine detectors. Soldiers walked ahead of armored columns with lightweight probes, marking explosives with sticks, sometimes detonating them underfoot. Clearing only one narrow corridor meant funnels were created where armor had no room to maneuver. Vehicles spread out wider than this lane faced certain destruction, so generals accepted the loss of men to make way for tanks. On this day, that willingness to sacrifice only fed into Ukraine's plan. The lead tank approached the densest part of the minefield. Buried in that strip were not single charges, but 3 TM-62 mines stacked beneath each other. That method was rare, but when triggered, the combined force tore upward with such energy that even the reinforced hull of a T-80 BVM could not withstand it. The explosion ripped straight through the armor compartment. Flames burst skyward, and in the chaos, the turret launched into the air before crashing back down beside the track. What looked like random tragedy for the Russians was anything but chance for the defenders. That eruption was the agreed signal Ukrainian forces had been waiting for. Within seconds, Bradleys that had sat cold for hours suddenly lit up on their thermal scopes. Crews locked targets and fired TOW missiles at the nearest tanks, still trapped in the narrow corridor. The missiles punched through armor at 2 and 3 kilometers, while 25mm cannons ripped into exposed infantry and lighter vehicles. From the Russian point of view, an armored spearhead had turned into a shooting gallery. Each vehicle stuck in line with engines roaring, unable to scatter. The pattern was clear. The first explosion had been the trigger for the ambush. Ukraine's kill box closed in a matter of minutes, and Russian confidence collapsed as quickly as their lead tank. But that raises the question, how was Ukraine able to prepare such a layered trap without having control of the skies? Why did the Russians lose not only dozens of tanks, but also the ability to coordinate their assault? The destruction on the ground was obvious, but hidden behind the smoke was something less visible and arguably more decisive: a war of signals. Tanks cannot advance in modern battle without clear communication between drones, artillery, and command posts. That thread connects everything. Once Russia lost it, their powerful hardware simply moved into the kill zone blind. The battlefield had been blanketed by the Kasuka-4 electronic warfare system. The device transmitted waves strong enough to wipe entire frequency bands, jamming radio chatter and blocking GPS navigation. Within minutes, Ukrainian operators controlling Bayraktar TB2 drones saw their screens flicker and freeze. A sudden silence followed in Ukrainian radios as encrypted lines went down, forcing commanders to improvise. Orders meant to coordinate artillery support never reached some batteries at all. In the confusion, runners were dispatched to move notes by hand through shellfire and snipers. Without steady networks, everything slowed, as if the battlefield shifted back decades. Chaos deepened on the Ukrainian side, but the interruptions were not one-sided. Russian units brought their Orlan 10 reconnaissance drones into the sky, and despite the noise, these aircraft still managed to function. From above, they tracked bursts of movement on the Ukrainian line and relayed coordinates to artillery units staged behind. Lancet loitering munitions were also directed toward flashes from Ukrainian positions, circling before diving with precision. Where Ukrainian vision blurred, Russian eyes remained active, at least in patches. This contrast left Ukrainian defenders holding their ground under a constant threat from guided munitions. The counterpunch came in the form of adaptability. Ukrainian troops had pre-laid wired communication lines between command points and artillery crews. These simple copper connections could not be jammed from the sky, and they remained reliable even as radio signals vanished. Alongside them, certain units deployed frequency-hopping radios designed to switch bands multiple times per second, making it harder for Russian jammers to pin them down. Messages were never smooth, but vital fire commands survived long enough to bring shells onto advancing armor. Instead of collapsing into total silence, the defense staggered, absorbed the blow, and began answering back. Examples of this resilience could be seen during the artillery duels. With GPS signals cut, American-supplied Excalibur precision shells could not guide themselves in flight. Yet Ukrainian gunners had already calculated firing solutions before the jamming waves hit. When the moment came, they did not need satellite confirmation. They opened fire using preset coordinates of likely Russian staging areas, and several strikes landed within meters of their intended points. In effect, Ukraine managed to fight with precision weapons as though operating in the First World War, mathematics and maps replacing satellite links. The duel for dominance quickly shifted to drones. Russia's Lancet drones slashed forward, damaging Bradleys and knocking out M777 artillery pieces. Ukrainian operators responded with small FPV quadcopters converted into Stingers, each rigged with RPG warheads. These improvised weapons slipped past Russian armor screens and slammed into vulnerable spots like engine decks or exposed infantry. Every drone that got through made up for lost artillery accuracy. The rhythm of battle stopped being set by tank maneuvers or infantry movement, and instead by whose drones could survive long enough to land a strike. Signals turned into chess pieces in their own right. Russian spoofing attempted to trick Ukrainian drones with fake coordinates. Ukrainian defenders layered their own counter-jamming, trying to punch temporary gaps open in the noise to let one wave of drones through before the frequencies collapsed again. Every tank attempting to move forward became hostage to this duel in the air. Without reliable links, Russia's armor often advanced with no awareness of waiting traps. The destruction of 35 tanks in one battle showed something larger than a tactical loss. Tanks are still powerful, but without drones to scout, electronic dominance to guide, and logistics to adapt, they become targets waiting to be hit. Armor alone cannot carry the battlefield anymore. Wars are now decided by who controls the invisible layer above the ground as much as the ground itself. If this fight proved anything, it's that the rules are changing fast. So rethink how wars are fought, subscribe for more breakdowns, and ask yourself, what happens when drones and jammers grow even stronger?